So the New York Times has been coming out with some interesting opinion pieces recently.
Are you about to call them based?
No.
You are, aren't you?
No.
You're literally this close to calling them based.
No.
Because you've been sat on right-wing Twitter for too long.
No.
I can tell, Harry.
No, it's because I've been observing the system as it works and thinking to myself...
Marinating in right-wing Twitter, yeah. Carry on.
Marinating in sensible ideas, correct.
Yeah. I'm not saying nonsensical ideas. I can just read your mind.
And listen, no, it's just interesting to see that the way that people have been analysing the system, myself included, being that democracy is not necessarily, as advertised, a system of political elections where you get the people to put votes in for representatives that they choose, and then they get put into office, and then they govern on the basis of what their voters wanted them to do when they got in there. It's more a system whereby America gets to bully the rest of the world, and a more a set of precepts and ideas that the elite that we have in charge at the moment hold and just call democracy.
Sure.
You could call it progressivism, you could call it leftism, you could call it any sort of communism, all sorts of names. They call it our democracy. And it doesn't actually have anything to do with elections, because no matter who you vote in, apart from maybe one or two exceptions, you're going to get different variations of the same flavour.
I actually think that this is because they're clever enough to know that Right, so contrary to much of what right-wing Truss will say, I actually think elections do matter, which is why they work so hard on them.
Reinforce them.
To reinforce the validity and sanctity of these elections. You wouldn't put so much effort in if this didn't matter, right?
But yes, because in 2016 Donald Trump got in, who was not the establishment.
Exactly right. So I actually think that there is a vulnerability there. We're just not able to exploit it properly, and that's the problem. And so the thing that they've done is very cleverly said, well, look, essentially it doesn't matter what party you vote for out of the major parties, we've captured them all. But that doesn't mean that the Achilles heel isn't still there and could be exploited.
It could be, but I think Donald Trump, when he won in 2016, did demonstrate that no matter your intentions going in, there is still a lot of containment and defense mechanisms once you're already in that position that are going to try and stop you every step of the way.
Of course, in complete agreement. There obviously are.
If you'd like a more in-depth discussion on that particular subject, you can look at the old book club that Josh and I did last year, where we were talking about the noted scholar Nima Parvini's Populist Delusion. He's coming out with a new book soon, which we will be covering as well. But that was an interesting discussion that Josh and I had, looking at the ideas of various thinkers who he was summarizing in that book. So please check that out. It's premium content, so you'll have to pay a little bit, but you've got the money. You could do it. I know you can.
It's worth your time.
It's definitely worth your time. But the opinion column, and I'm not talking about the one that got a bit of look in as well, where it just said we need black majority states, because that was entertaining, but didn't have as much to do with this one. And it's an interesting admission.
Who's we in this sentence?
The Richard Spencer Democrats, I can imagine.
It's either either it's the Richard Spencer Democrats, or it's who, I'm not gonna get into it because we'll get in trouble. But all I'm saying is look at Detroit. Okay, that's all I'm saying. It's anyway.
I will agree with the sentiment that there are plenty of black Americans who I imagine wouldn't like to be ferried over there because of situations like the Detroit situation.
Can we go and ask Jesse Lee Peterson what his opinion on that is?
Oh, goodness gracious. He'll get away with it. He can get away with it.
Somehow he gets away with it.
But no, this was the opinion column where he said, it was a guest essay by someone who said, elections are bad for democracy. I love that they just came out and said
I read The Populist Delusion.
Yeah, that's
now I think elections are bad for democracy.
I subscribe to the academic agency. It has now been changed to the worst people run for office. It's time for a better way.
Yeah, because saying elections are bad for our democracy doesn't sound terribly democratic.
No, it certainly doesn't. And this is, of course, after Germany has come out and said that we might just ban the AfD.
Yeah.
The AfD, who are taking part democratically in the democratic process, not democratic enough for our likes, and so we might just ban them to be democratic.
As Steve Bannon said in, I think it was 2016, we love democracy because we're going to win. And I think he's right, actually. I think that using the democratic method, the far right is indeed going to win, which is why they're like, oh God, democracy's bad, isn't it?
Well, it's like if they... I would never advocate for direct democracy, but if the English people, for instance, had direct democracy, we wouldn't have the influx of mass migration.
It doesn't even have to be... Well, yeah, that's definitely true. But it doesn't even have to be direct democracy. It just has to be a kind of consciousness that we need to vote for things that are not captured, right? That's what it has to be. If we can... And again, the reason that they know that this is actually an Achilles heel of theirs, that if the populace just gets some sort of self-awareness and says, well, hang on a second, we can take you away and put this insane fire-breathing guy.
We can put our Caesar in place instead.
We actually could do that, and they know that. And so...
that is why they spend so much time and effort reinforcing them in the first place.
Exactly. And so I am kind of tired of, like, the right wing on Twitter being like, oh, democracy's terrible. It's like, well, they are literally telling us that they're vulnerable in this way constantly. They're constantly saying it.
To Steelman, my friend,
I'm friends with them too, but they are ignoring the fact that the left is telegraphing to them. Elections are bad for democracy, as in our managerial regime can be threatened by elections.
Well, their criticisms would be that, yes, that has been the case for a long time, and it wasn't as bad before, but since Donald Trump especially, they have consolidated a lot of the containment. I'm
not saying they haven't, but they are telling us that they can't stop us from actually electing.
Well, they might now just make it so you can't even vote in the first place, and they're just coming out and saying it.
And that changes the political calculus of...
It really does.
And far be it from me to have to cite Locke at people, but actually he makes a rather persuasive case about the right to revolt. So I'm just saying.
Interesting. But before we get into too spicy subject, let's read what some of this
article... If you don't have a vote, then what is your option here?
Well, let's read what this man thinks would be a sensible solution. Where he says, on the eve of the first debate of the 2024 presidential race, trust in government is rivaling historic lows. I wonder why. Officials have been working hard to save...
Because they ended up with Joe Biden and we've got Rishi Sunak. Yeah. And nobody wanted them.
Literally nobody.
Why has this happened?
Even within the closed elections of the UK Conservative Party that was choosing between people like Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, we still didn't choose Rishi Sunak. They chose Liz Truss.
2/3 chose Liz Truss over Rishi Sunak.
And Liz Truss was not a great
option
in the first
She was thick as two short planks. But I think her heart was actually in the right place.
Well, yeah, her heart was in the right place. But I think the main reason people voted for her was that she, like you say, her heart was in the right place, and she wasn't Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, she wasn't a globalist.
And then the globalists took her out.
I'm not saying that Liz Truss was based or anything.
No.
Liz Truss is not bright enough to be based.
The only thing that she really wanted to do of any substance was reduce tax by about 5%.
Which, oh my God.
The Bank of England said, no, we don't want that, thank you.
Destroy her career. It's like, man, I'd love to pay lower taxes.
Yeah, please.
I just love it.
I'd also love to pay lower taxes. Yeah. But carrying on, officials have been working hard to safeguard elections. I think I'm allowed to say that on YouTube now, and assure citizens of their integrity. You know that I
wasn't in any doubt until you told me that they were safe. Just so you know.
Then I was like, wait, why did you have to say that?
Yeah, exactly. That's weird that you bring that up.
To say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, seriously, it's like when my kid comes in and goes, "There's no problem out in the garden, Dad." I'm like, "Oh, what'd you do?"
Oh, okay, all the cookies are still in the jar. Don't worry.
That's weird that you bring that up, son.
I counted all of them. Yeah. But if we want public office to have integrity, we might be better off eliminating elections altogether. All right, now you speak in my language. If you think that sounds anti-democratic, think again.
Oh my...
This is genius.
This is literally a comedy sketch.
This really is. The ancient Greeks invented democracy, and in Athens, many government officials were selected through sortation, a random lottery from a pool of candidates. So if we just pick people's names out of the hat, I mean, ignore the fact that of the people eligible to throw that hat in the first place, you had to be part of a elite citizen class, which was made up of only a few thousand people.
Well, there were quite a few Athenian citizens. They were just landowning.
They were the sorts
Athenian
of people
men
whose entire lives had been built up and educated so that they would be able to take on leadership roles if put into them.
Well, no, all I'm saying is we would be, if we were Athenians, we would be electors probably, right? Because we're, fairly well-to-do men. So let's hear him out. Actually,
no, I'm not saying that this is. I'm not saying I'm against this so far. If I can put my name in the hat.
But the thing is, he's kind of right and kind of wrong, right? So he's not wrong that many official positions were done through lots. This is how Socrates became like a magistrate, right? But these weren't the elected government of Athens. So Pericles, for example, repeatedly won election throughout the Peloponnesian War, and he was directly elected to that office by the ecclesia on the Pnyx. The functionaries, like the civil service, were drawn by lot, basically. It's not the government itself. Which, don't get me wrong, again, I'm not against the idea of electing the civil service by lot, to be honest, because, I mean, how could you remove a civil servant any other way?
Yeah, that's a good point. But he says, in the United States, we already use a version of a lottery to select for jurors, because that worked out so well for Derek Chauvin. But what if we did the same with mayors, governors, legislators, justices, and even presidents? And I'm
okay.
I am starting to think maybe this would be better.
Okay, well, he doesn't realize what he's arguing for.
You'd have a less chance of a rhino getting in, or a Joe Biden.
You'd have a massively far-right government every single time.
Probably, especially in a place like New Hampshire, maybe.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Well, just even in Democrat areas where they vote Democrat, the average person who votes Democrat is not actually a radical left-wing, pink-haired SJW, right? The average person is really someone who's getting kind of payout from the state. They don't necessarily align with the politics. They're, in many ways.
Well, this has been the reason for demographic shifts, because of the fact that you may not agree with our social politics, but we will give you money if you vote for us.
And do you not remember in Chicago when they were like, oh, we're going to be giving $5 million to the illegal immigrants who are here, and the black community was just like, you are, you're giving that money to us.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I do remember that.
And it's just, and it's, okay, so as soon as the system of patronage starts being interrupted, it gets very far right all of a sudden. Very far right. So it's not that these people are necessarily left wing, it's that they are in a system from which they are profiting, right? And okay, so if you start doing things by lot, then you just get a random selection of the population. Like I said, only about 8% of the population are actually progressive activists. So only 8% of the lots are going to go to pink-haired SJWs. The rest of them are going to go to normal, self-interested people who are what the left would call conservative, and at least sort of subconsciously conservative. People who aren't really thinking about politics necessarily in an ideological way.
People who probably just want to keep what they know what's good for them.
Exactly. And those people can easily be argued towards. And if there's a large group of them, and then 8% of them screeching leftists, screaming at everyone's racist, well, it doesn't even matter. No one's voting for you.
Yeah. But it says further in
and that's the thing. No one's voting for you. Okay, what are you going to do? Vote me out? No, you can't. It's done by lot. I'm here for a year or however long the lot is.
I got picked out of the magic hat. You can't do anything.
No, it's literally that. So you can't even be like, the media's going to ruin your career. No, it's not. It literally can't, right? I can't get removed.
Well, I do still think there are weaknesses in this.
Of course there are weaknesses in this.
Because they say, people expect leaders chosen at random to be less effective than those picked systematically, but multiple experiments led by the psychologist Alexander Haslam, the opposite held true. Why were randomly chosen leaders more effective? They led more democratically, and perhaps...
Okay, hang on a second. This is not an argument against me, right?
No, because I know what would happen this situation is that you would either have massive financial interests that are still able to operate, because you don't suddenly start to pick who's the CEO out of Tesla or Facebook out of a hat, that are still able to manipulate using money, and you still have probably a vast bureaucracy, and we don't know how they get shifted around, if they would be included in the lots for this. Who would be able to manipulate some random guy who just got his name picked out of a hat?
Maybe, but you don't forget that the random sort of boomers who are going to get picked might also just be kind of... No,
we're entering the era of the boomocracy now.
But they also have got this kind of boomer jihadi mindset, right? Where they're just like, no, I think we should just shut it all down. We'll appropriate it to the state. Or they won't even think about it. They won't know. They won't be political experts. They'll
You're going to get Facebook boomers in charge of government.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so they're probably going to terrorize big business. They're like, oh no, we're gonna put a cap on the amount you can earn. What are you talking about? You don't need all that money. Blah 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 blah. And it's like, no, God, no. There are going to be major problems from this. And they're like, yeah, we don't care.
You're right. People might just switch off from politics altogether just because they can't be bothered to listen to these people ramble.
Yeah, and I don't know who these people are. It's just a bunch of randomly selected boomers who are not going to ruin everything. It's like, well, it's better than a bunch of pre-selected boomers ruining everything, isn't it?
Collapse. Over the past year, I've floated the idea of sortition with a number of current members of Congress. Their immediate concern is ability. How do we make sure that citizens chosen randomly are capable of governing?
BS is their immediate concern ability. Their immediate concern is, wait, my job?
Yep.
You expect me to vote to end my own job? That's not going to happen, is it?
Yeah, but I love this bit at the end here, which says, a lottery would give a fair shot to people who aren't tall enough or male enough to win, which says to me, the only way we can get Hillary Clinton in is if we pick her name randomly out of a hat.
Randomly.
It's finally her time. Well, that's the problem, isn't it? The other problem would be, okay, who's in charge of collecting the names? Who's in charge of picking the names randomly? There's a lot of ways that it could be reinforced similarly. But there was a hilarious image that somebody put where, wow, I can't believe they just came out and said it, where if you check the image, Jack, if we go to that, yep, elections are fake and gay. I mean, that's one way of saying it. They're just going for it.
Yeah.
And at the same time as this coming out, interestingly, it seems that people are trying to, maybe some of the bigger publications are trying to realign people's thinking because, God, reinforcing these elections is hard work. It's getting a bit difficult for us. The Atlantic just came out and said, Americans vote too much. And interestingly...
that might actually be true.
Well, that's the thing. The sentiment behind this, similarly with the elections one, is something I can understand here. Because listen to what he says here. It's always election season in America. Dozens of local contests are taking place across the country this month, from Montgomery, Alabama, to the Mariana Ranchos County Water District in California. On August 8th alone, Custer County, Colorado, held a recall election for a county commissioner. Ohio asked residents to consider a major ballot measure, and voters in Oklahoma weighed in on several ballot measures. So, similarly to how we have to choose councillors and other people of local elections over here, America seems to have even more of that going on.
Yeah, because they vote for
like
sheriffs and stuff.
Yeah, they vote for everything constantly. And the sentiment behind this I can kind of agree with, which is that, yeah, if you're trying to live a normal life with a family, raise your children well, and also hold down a job, how much mental space do you have to allot to all of the different considerations for politics that you need to take into when you're having to take part in every other aspect of the political process? It's kind of cruel to expect a normal person to have to dedicate so much of their own time and personal life to understanding everything that's going on.
This is why these elections generally have a much lower turnout.
Well, yeah, but that's a sign as well, isn't it?
It
that
is,
most people can't even be bothered to take part in them
It
because
is.
they have so much else going on in their own lives.
And this is how you end up with something like the Welsh Assembly.
Yeah.
And ironically, the Welsh Assembly is completely dominated by Labour because about a third of Wales interacts with it. Like 2/3 of the Welsh electorates don't vote. At least having the Achilles heel available means that if things get sufficiently bad, come the right kind of critical consciousness in the population itself, they can at least decide, right, no, this day we're going to go and vote for Joe Bloggs, who is massively far right.
I suppose there is still the chance for the Caesar to arrive who actually inspires people who wouldn't
Exactly.
normally to go out and vote.
Without the option, it would be less likely.
I still am very skeptical of the system, but either way, it's interesting as well. I was made aware of this article that came out in 2020 in March from
I remember this one,
from The Atlantic.
We just need you to exist.
Yeah. Stay alive, Joe Biden. And
Which is not guaranteed.
No, well, it's not guaranteed. He's held in this long, we think.
Sure.
We don't know if this has been an extended weekend at Bernie's gag going on.
I mean, he's looking in really
does
bad
keep
shape.
falling over as well, so maybe whoever's puppeteering just...
Did you see him fall asleep at the Hawaii, memorial thing?
Did he? I didn't see that.
Yeah, you didn't see it?
Bloody hell.
Like, they're giving some speeches and he's just like...
Didn't 1,000 people die, if not more?
Yeah.
And he fell asleep.
Yeah, and
Head of state, gentlemen.
There were 81 million votes. There were a bunch of people who were like, "Oh no, he's just bowing his head solemnly." It's like, no, he's old and he's asleep.
He keeps falling asleep.
And
in
the thing is, I'm
places.
not even angry that he's fallen asleep. Like, it's like, well, look at him. He's 81 or something. You know,
He probably has no idea what's going on.
Exactly. He doesn't know where he is. He shouldn't be in charge. you know you're just using him, literally Weekend at Bernie style.
Yeah, well, they say that just here. Democrats need little from the front runner beyond his corporeal presence.
Yeah, that's literally
That's
it.
all. We don't really care if he falls asleep at these memorials. Yeah, it looks stupid, but the deep state bureaucracy still gets to run everything the same way that they did already. So
that's exactly what they're saying. Yeah.
That's all it is. So,
but the thing is about this. So this, just as a quick thing here, that if your enemy is saying, right, okay, well, we don't want this thing because we feel it's a threat to us, you don't let them take away that thing. In fact, you do that thing even more than you did previously, and you do it to the maximum extent, so they're screeching and hollering and complaining that you're destroying them, right? If they're saying, look, that thing, when they put a flare on something and say, right, okay, maybe we shouldn't have elections. Maybe we should just have a lot system that we can fix in the background or something like that. No, we're gonna have elections. We're gonna have lots of elections. We're gonna have more elections, and we're gonna vote for the people you hate. That's what you need to do. You need to do the exact opposite, because what they're saying here is that, look, that's our Achilles heel. We're highlighting a weakness. Okay, great. Now we're gonna thrust the spear in. Then, if they're highlighting the weaknesses, we've got to go for it.
Well, I hope that it can end up like that. I don't share your optimism for the system in the same way, just because of the fact if they're saying outright that, well, we might just take elections away. I mean, that shows that if they have the power to be able to do that in the first place.
No, they need your consent to do that.
Potentially.
They absolutely will. If
they can always manufacture consent.
They can, but also we know that they're saying the elections themselves are an Achilles heel, and we don't want to have to continue to write Time magazine articles about how much effort it was to make sure that the correct result came up.
I still can't believe they wrote that article.
I know, but that's the point. So this is a weakness. They're saying that the elections themselves are a weakness and they'd like to get rid of them. Then no, we need to in fact keep pressing harder on that issue.
Well, to do so, I think that people will need a lot of money behind them. You need patronage to be able to do that. So
maybe, or you need energy and goodwill.
Also a lot of money.
I've got not that much money actually. Depends.
Donald Trump was able
this
to
is
stay
what we'll be
out
talking about at the event this weekend.
Yeah. So people will be able to watch footage of that when it comes out.
It'll be on the website.
No, but I will just say, to end this off, I do think it will be possible, but you do need, I think, a lot of patronage just to keep you out of the pockets of a lot of the Washington sphere that goes on around there, the lobbyists and the lobbying that goes on all of the time. That's why Donald Trump was able to do what he did, because he had the money to be able to stay out of them.
There are different levels of this, and it depends on where your backing comes from.
I do think with America, as much as you get lots and lots of elections on the local level, the local elections are the ones that you can sway the most with, and your they're the ones influence. You should.
Yeah. But we'll talk about this at the event.
Yeah. But anyway, so the New York Times says elections fake and gay. Agree or disagree? Let us know.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast of Lotus Eaters, why not visit our website, where you can watch the podcast live, uncensored, in full, and for free from 1 o'clock UK time every weekday. And for as little as £5 a month, you can get all of our paywalled premium content, such as Bo's series Epochs, where he goes through various historical periods with Carl, and in this episode they discuss the life and times of barbarian warlord Attila the Hun, who single-handedly held the Roman Empire to ransom toward the waning days. And if you'd like to see the rest of what we're putting out, you can follow Carl over at Twitter at @Sargon_of_Acad, and the rest of us over at LotusEaters_com. Till next time, goodbye.